The light is still disturbing me. I probably will just come down here. Maybe it's going to be better. Cool. Um, Welcome to CHAOSScon Africa. Can I hear some round of applause? All right. Awesome. So my name is Mary Blessing. I think you can see that on my tag. And I am your host for today. Please, what's the word? Please bear with me and just cooperate, all right? Why is everywhere dull? In sessions for this event, and I really encourage everyone to, pay keen attention and just enjoy yourself, have fun while at it, right? And so I'm just going to talk briefly about the first. Okay, one moment. Okay, cool. So before that, I did forget Ruth, who is our community manager. She's going to just briefly do a welcome speech before we go into today's session. Hi, Ruth.
Oh, the lights are so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really so excited that this is happening, right? I'm going to do a proper talk by the end of this, like the last talk that will happen, so you get to know more of like the history of Chaos Africa. How many people are in the Slack, in Chaos Africa Slack? Okay, okay. So there's a what they call those things, roll up banner that has a QR code. Even the QR code on your tag has the link to join the Chaos Slack. So please do join. And also, when you join the Chaos Slack, join the channel #CHAOSScon, because that will be the chat for async communication, because there are some other people that are not here joining us, and you can ask questions to the speakers that are recorded talks. You can ask questions there, so please join. So like I said, I'm going to do like a proper talk of like history of Chaos Africa, what brought us here, how far we've gone. But I'm really so excited to see everyone today. So many people came in from different states in Nigeria. So many people came in from different parts of Lagos. Some people came in from the US. Some people came in from Somalia. And some people are coming from Ghana, someone is coming from Uganda. So we have a lot of people here. So I'm really grateful for how far we've come, and I'm officially starting the event, and I hope you have the best time. We have food, we have breakfast, we have lunch, rice and stew is very plenty. So you're going to have fun, and you're going to connect with people, and please do network a lot. There are a lot of people here, so yeah, we can get started. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Please keep clapping. Keep clapping. I heard rice and stew is very plenty. I like that part. All right, great. So we're just going to go ahead and start the first session. It's a recorded session, and you can view from here or over there as well. Media, are you ready? Cool. So the talk is
Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great.
in open source projects, and this talk is by Brian, and I really hope you have an amazing time listening to him. Bye.
Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great, and I hope you're enjoying the experience at CHAOSScon Africa. I am so glad that you made time to come and listen to my talk, Building Trust in AI, the importance of explainability in open source projects. I hope by the end of this talk, I will have inspired you and shared with you the significance of explainability in AI projects with the context of open source projects and, of course, community help. So let's get right into it. I am Brian Kaiwanyuba. I'm currently a machine learning engineer apprentice at Omdina, where I'm working on a project to reduce implicit biases in healthcare ER scenarios with AI. I am, of course, ridiculously interested in open source. I love open source. I've contributed to several open source projects, and I'm currently also one of the volunteers at the Open Source Community Africa Nairobi chapter. Also, you can know more about me in the link, in my website link, but I'll share that with you later, of course. So yeah, so what is the significance of explainability in AI open source projects? We have seen several failures in the past of very big open source projects that have failed because of the lack of explainability. For example, a project that was being developed by a team of researchers in Stanford University, where they were developing an AI system that could predict whether a person would commit a crime based on their social media activity. However, the system was not able to explain how it made its predictions, which raised concerns about potential for the system to be used to discriminate someone or people of a certain group. So you see, all these are errors and are failures of many projects that we could have mitigated if we could have included explainability in our project. So let me share a use case here. So for example, if you are held accountable for the decision of a machine in contexts that have financial, safety, security, or personal ramifications to an individual, would you blindly trust his decision? How can we hold accountable artificial intelligence systems that can make decisions on possibly unethical grounds? For example, predicting a person's weight and health by their social media images or the world region they are from as part of their downstream determination about their future, or like when they quit their job, commit a crime, or could be radicalized into terrorism. You see, all of these are things that we wouldn't want to happen to us, and we can mitigate them through explainability in our various open source AI projects. So let's see, what exactly is explainability? So according to the Oxford Dictionary, the term explainable means that to account, a statement or account that makes something clear, a reason or justification given for an action or belief. So you see, like something that is made clear, you get to understand the root system of it. You get to understand, okay, how is this coming into being? Like, some of us can easily explain concepts, let's say in Python, in Java, we can easily explain closures in Python per se. So that is the same way we want to use it here. So maybe, can you account for it? Can you say, where did it come from? Is the end justified? Like, is the end clearly explained? So based on this definition, most of the existing AI systems are not explainable, and you're going to see how in the next slide. So, but you see that with the goal of explainability is to actually reduce biases in artificial intelligence, because the whole goal of explainability is leading us towards responsible innovation and responsible AI, which are concepts that are very critical in the development and in the current machine learning space. So let's see more. So explainability in AI systems builds trust by providing users with significant insights into how decisions are made. So for example, explainability in AI increases trust. When users have visibility into the reasoning behind the AI outcomes, they are more likely to trust the system and feel confident in its capabilities. This trust then fosters user adoption and encourages continued engagement with the technology. Let me share an example of this. If you currently, ChatGPT is the buzz in the street, like everyone is talking about ChatGPT. So in Zimbabwe, there's a team of builders that came together and they built a ChatGPT version for Zimbabwe. So you see, like once they built such a thing for Zimbabwe, it can probably understand the local Zimbabwe language and all that. That helps fosters, like it makes the users feel like they are more confident in using it. For example, if someone came up with the ChatGPT that you could actually prompt it in Pidgin very fluently in Pidgin language, wouldn't you want to use it? So yeah, you would want to use it. Another significance of explainability is it improves user adoption rates of AI systems. Users are more likely to embrace and adopt an AI technology when they can understand and interpret the decisions they made. So when AI models are explainable, users, of course, feel more comfortable using the technology to higher adoption rates and greater user satisfaction. So even if you're working on an open source AI project, it wouldn't be hard for them to catch up with it. Also, explainability in open source projects enables community collaboration and improvement. When the inner workings of AI models are transparent and accessible, community members can contribute to the development and improvement of the models. This collaboration strengthens the project's overall health and fosters a sense of collective ownership and responsibility within the community, which is what we all want and we are all looking forward to. So maybe the last point there before I move on, also by understanding the reasoning behind AI decisions, users and developers can identify and address potential biases, unfairness, or discriminatory outcomes. This transparency holds AI systems accountable and helps in mitigating unintended consequences and promotes ethical practices within the open source community. So you see, like, it plays a very crucial role in ensuring ethical accountability in AI systems. So let me just go right into the explainability techniques and tools so that we see how exactly what can I use to ensure explainability in my open source project. So we have, I'm just going to share with you three, but there are many other tools that you can use. So the first one is rule-based models. With rule-based models, they provide transparency and interpretability by using explicit rules that make decisions. They are widely applicable in open source projects and can be easily understood and modified by the community. A classical example of the rule-based system is the domain-specific expert system that uses rules to make a deductions of choices. For example, an expert system might help a doctor choose the correct diagnosis based on a cluster of symptoms. So that's just a simple example of rule-based models. Another one is feature importance analysis. With feature importance analysis, this helps you in understanding which features or variables have the most significant impact on the model's outputs. With this technique, it allows open source developers to identify key factors driving the model decisions and assess their fairness and bias. We also have model agnostic techniques. With model agnostic techniques such as LIME and SHARP, they are valuable for open source projects. So LIME refers to local interpretable model agnostic explanations, and SHARP is Shapley additive explanations. Maybe you can just check them out. These techniques provide local explanations for individual predictions and offer insights into model behavior without relying on specific model architectures. So all of these are so I shared with you what is explainability and its significance in this project, what tools you can use. So now let's see what challenges are there and what are some of the considerations that you can take. So one of the challenges is that we have black box models are highly complex. For example, one of the major challenges is the explainability of complex black models, such as deep neural networks. So these models have millions of parameters, making it difficult to understand the decision-making process. If I want to extract meaningful explanations from such models, existing techniques may not provide satisfactory insights. That is why we always say that if you can keep things simple, just keep them simple so that you will also easen the process of explainability. So another challenge is there is always a trade-off between accuracy and explainability, but there's currently many tools that you can use to reduce this trade-off as much as possible. So techniques that enhance explainability, such as simplifying models or using interpretable algorithms, may sacrifice some level of performance, which we do not want. So striking the right balance between accuracy and explainability is crucial, especially in high performance is critical in these systems, but interpretability is also considered. So, for example, there is Fairlearn. This is a library in Python which you can check out. It has a great way of making sure that you have a great balance between explainability, reducing biases, and actually the accuracy of the model. Another one is lack of standardization and evaluation metrics. So the field of explainable AI is still evolving, and there's a lack of standardization in techniques and evaluation metrics. This poses challenges in comparing and benchmarking different explainability methods. So without established standards, it becomes difficult to assess the effectiveness and reliability of explainability techniques, hindering their wider adoption and interoperability across open source projects. But this is not a challenge, because if you are doing an open source project, you can decide to come up with a base standard that can be the guidance of that project when it comes to matters explainability. And also ethical and legal implications is another big challenge. So for example, when I'm sharing detailed explanations about a decision-making process, it may inadvertently expose sensitive information or infringe on the privacy rights of the user. For example, let's say I'm working on sensitive data like medical data, and I cannot really share much about it to the developer because that is a critical data. I don't want to share it with everyone. But also I want to develop explainable system. That is why you have things like the Flower library in Python to help you counter these ethical and legal implications. But just wanted to add that and share that this is also something you should consider when choosing an explainable system tool. So I had 10 minutes to share. I'm like with seconds past my 10 minutes, but these are the key takeaways I hoped to have shared with you in this talk, where at least you have gained insight on the importance of explainability, you've learned about the challenges, and you've also gained some understanding of techniques and tools used in building explainable AI systems. So what I always say personally is that the journey of explainability is a balance of what was, what is, and what should be. So for what was, we have to acknowledge that we aren't perfect, and we left unchecked, we propagate our biases in the model we train. So we don't have explainability, and when you're left unchecked, it becomes a big problem to us. And with what is, it's a recognition that we already introduced biases into the process to improve performance, accuracy, and optimizing for errors. And so how can we now go forward with this? And now, what should be is we start to act by putting all you've discussed today in this talk into practice. The tooling and approaches that we have been discussed today in efforts to solve these constraint optimization problems as part of our work, as part of your workflow, let's say as a data scientist, machine learning engineer, and also making these hard trade-offs and having these hard conversations to avoid disappropriate product failure and representational harm and opportunity denials in groups or individuals. So that is why I say it's a balance of what was, what is, and what should be. So I hope we will collectively use these tools and techniques in our open source projects, that is artificial intelligence and machine learning open source projects, so that we can be better ancestors in this practice, bringing a better lived experience to our daughters and sons online in the future. So yeah. So with that, I really want to say thank you, everyone. I'm 2 minutes past time, but thank you, everyone, for coming and taking part in this talk with me. I really hope you enjoy CHAOSScon Africa. I'm so excited to have spoken at this conference today. I hope to join all of you next year in person. And I really, 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 really can't wait to hear from you. Of course, if you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to me on GitHub or on Twitter, or you can check out that website. And of course, you can reach out to me or on LinkedIn, just Brian Kaimanyumba. I'll be there to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day today at the conference. Goodbye.
Another session is also recorded. We have Luis Canas Diaz going to be joining us virtually to talk about community health metrics with Grimoire Lab. So Grimoire Lab is it's one of the softwares in the Chaos project, and we have one of the employees there talking to us about, or speaking to us about community health metrics with that software. Media. Okay, so he's just going to bring up the talk now, and Okay, cool. I think it's up already. Awesome. So, just a minute. Okay. Okay, that's loud. That's cool. All right. So please, I also want to encourage you to please pay attention. I just might be asking questions, and you might just win yourself a. Okay, I won't say what, but you just might win yourself something, right? Okay. So we can go on.
So I'll go a bit faster. At Bitergia, we got jealous about the pony factor. And I think that the same year or 1 year after the pony factor, we created the elephant factor, which is pretty similar to the pony factor, but instead of looking of identifying contributors, we identify organizations or companies. So we want to find out the companies behind the majority of the contributions. So some projects can be led by 2-3 companies, other can be led by a single company. In the second scenario, if that company goes away, then the project can be unmaintained. So this is something that should be also taken into account. And the third metric is active contributors. And this is relevant. And next time you see a report about a project or community, seeing like a number of commit developers, number of PR submitters for the project X, ask this to yourself. Are they talking about people submitting PRs, people creating commits during the last year, last 2 years, last 5 years, during the whole activity, the whole life of the project? This is relevant because there is a way, for instance, to measure only active contributors, okay, and active contributions. At Bitergia, by default, we use the definition of active, like as someone contributing to the project in the last 6 months. And the default definition of contribution is something sending a PR or issue, or submitting a bug report. This is an issue, or creating a commit. Okay. So now let's go to the dashboard. Let me skip some of the slides. Well, let me talk now about Grimoire Lab. We are going to have like 2 minutes to see it live. So Grimoire Lab is 100% open source. It is written mainly, in Python, and we are using OpenSearch as the search engine and user interface for the data. We are using Django to provide a user interface to deal with the profiles of the contributors and companies. So we have different data sets, and the result is a dashboard that we are going to see now in OpenSearch. It is, as I said, it is GPL version 3. It is open source, and it will be open source. And so we are tracking data sources, platforms that we track, that we call data sources, like GitHub, GitLab, Gerrit, Discourse, Stack Overflow, and many more. And in the slides I include here, there are some links to live examples. And I'm going to, these two are run by community members. I'm going to use the one that we are using at Bitergia to provide some of the services we provide, which is called Biter.io. So let me now switch to the browser. If I can. Okay, so let me double check that I'm recording this. Okay, yeah, I have 2 minutes. Well, this is the view. This is the dashboard that we are using. This is OpenSearch. So we are customizing OpenSearch with some plugins to allow us to provide the data. In OpenSearch, everything is clickable, which is quite cool. Here we have an overview of the Git contributions, and we have a menu on top with different dashboards available, and many useful tools provided by the OpenSearch product. I was thinking that this is not really OpenSearch. We are going to migrate this to OpenSearch in the next weeks. This is still, I think it's the last free open version of Kibana, but we are switching to OpenSearch very soon. So this is not the latest Grimoire Lab available, but the functionality is very similar. So for instance, we are here having a look at the contributions for the last 5 years. You can see here this filter for the last 5 years for the Chaos project, and I'll show you how flexible this is. So instead of last 5 years, we're interested in the last 6 months. Okay. And we know that chaos is composed by many different sub-projects, and we have them here. And I'm interested now in Grimoire Lab. So I can filter by Grimoire Lab. We see that most of the activity in the last 6 months in Grimoire Lab is Vitergia's activity. So we have like 500 commits, 9 authors, and we have here the frequency of the commits and the different authors per month. So other cool things that can be done with this dashboard. You can, for instance, start filtering in authors, or you can use the filters on top to exclude them. Okay, I'm out of time, so just visit the dashboard. There are many different dashboards. We have more than 30, I think. There are very cool things. We can create network graphs, very different kind of graphs, and you are welcome to join the community and to start creating your dashboards and share them with us. So thank you so much. I'm sorry for being out of time. I guess that my present version of myself has been replying your questions in the chat. So thank you so much.
Hi everyone. Yes, that was my colleague and co-founder. So I know the slide wasn't so visible, right? But just a summary of what he talked about. Grimoire Lab is one. How many people know the meaning of chaos?
Awesome. Also, if you have questions, you can just go on the CHAOSScon Slack. Luis is there and is always ready to take your questions. And accelerating your personal and professional growth through open source contributions. And please clap for him while he makes his way to the stage. Hi, how you doing? How you feeling? Are you feeling nervous? Just relax. All right, cool.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, so my name is Desmond. and yeah, I'm happy to be in your midst today. So I'm an open source engineer and developer advocate, developer experience. I contribute to open source majorly. So where I work, actually, I contribute to open source at Flank Source, and I also contribute to Ansible technical documentation and at Polytope Labs. So I also do speaking engagements like this, and also I build stuff. I don't know. So today I'll be speaking on accelerating your accelerating your personal and professional growth through open source contributions. So basically how to stand out in a world full of talent. So if you should notice, many people are coming into tech, right? Many people are beginning to find tech interesting, different aspects, development, design, program management, like a lot of them. And we need to understand that for you to be able to see as a valuable asset, as a talented, everybody's talented, most people are talented, but you need to do things that will make you to stand out. So the essence of our talk today is like how we can leverage on open source contribution to stand out in a world full of talent. So, so first is we'll do an introduction. Sorry, what is open source and why we should contribute to open source? So, open source software is a computer software, that is released under this license that you can use it, you can reproduce it, and you can distribute it as you want. So that's it's produced under that license that you can use it for anything you want to use it for without the maybe the real main owner or the main originator holding you accountable on how you use it actually. So it's actually a way of like building softwares that is free and open to all, and everybody can contribute to its growth, and everybody can make it better, and everybody can make a better version of it. So that's all about open source. So, and there are a lot of things about open source, not just development. It's about the community, it's about the people using it, the developers. It's about like how everything is being organized, how everything is being managed, and all that. So that's open source for you. Unlike maybe closed source softwares that is marketable, is it has patent or stuff like that. So that's open source. So why contribute to open source? So I listed a few reasons why you should contribute to open source. So if you look at the image there, you see something like all modern digital infrastructure, and then you see another one, a little piece of code holding that big infrastructure, which is some open source project somebody in Nebraska is maintaining since 2003. So you see that open source is like changing a lot in the world of software, right? So open source is actually like contributing a lot. So, and the reason why you should contribute to open source is like to give back to community. So somebody like me, when I begin to learn how to, become a software engineer, I leverage most of programs developed by open source communities like this, and that's how I started my journey. And so I might want to give back to the community, right? So I will go ahead, contribute to any open source project I love or I use and I like. I might decide to help them manage the community, help them do some developer experience, help them document whatever they are doing, and just make it better. So another reason is to learn new skills and to meet mentors. So last year, for example, I got interested in blockchain. I came here for Polygon event, so I met someone, and they are having like a community call like every week, 2 times. That's how I joined them, started learning from them, and I became good at blockchain. I even, because of that experience, I got a job. So it also like an avenue to meet mentors, learn a new skill through open source. And then another reason is to meet people and build network. Like we are all here today, you can meet other people that maybe you are in the same field or even in different fields. You can network with them, you can increase your network, somebody here might be like a key to you being the next big thing tomorrow, just because you are here in this event, right? So another reason is to make a difference or to make an impact. So if you want maybe to change the way something is or something is working, you can use open source to do that, right? If you don't like do things the conventional way and you want to make impact, right, in the world of software, you can use open source to do that. And then most people need to have fun. Yeah, most people use it to have fun. So that's another reason why people contribute to open source. And like the main reason why we're here today is like to build a portfolio and to stand out, right? So you can use open source to build a portfolio and to stand out among other talented people. So the next slide is I want to talk about the talent to job and then job to career growth pipeline. So first I'll talk about like the challenges, right, from talent to job, and then the challenges from job to career progression. So first of all, I think most of the issue we do face, like why breaking out in tech, is maybe getting our first job, landing our first role or our first gig as maybe junior engineer, junior designer, junior product manager, product all that, right? So but then there are challenges, right, that comes with this talent to job pipeline. So the first one is like it's time consuming. So to recruit someone is actually time consuming. So for companies, right? So when they put out those ads, millions of or thousands of people apply to those jobs. They have to review them and order. So it's like stressful. So that's like one of the challenges. So sometimes you might see they might end up not recruiting from those thousands, and next week they'll still put out another ads for that same job because maybe they couldn't find what they are looking for. So yeah, another one is like cultural fit and team dynamics, right? So there might be challenges about cultural fit and team dynamics, how maybe a certain person or a certain demographic fits into the company's culture and all that. So while I'm listing these challenges, I also like we're talking about how open source can fix them. So something like time-consuming recruitment process. If let's say contribute to open source and you have a portfolio that shows your work you do in open source, it will easily like make you to stand out like in the pool of talent. Let's say there are thousands of talent and they just see your CV and see that okay, you have worked with this technology. In fact, you contribute to this technology as a software engineer. You help them build it. So you can easily say, okay, this is our guy, right? So this is how like contributing to open source can make you stand out from this time-consuming recruitment process and different from other people in the talent pool. Then for cultural fit and team dynamics, so because open source is like open for everybody, you meet different people. So the open source community actually make it easy for you to adapt to different culture and different team dynamics, right? You work with different projects. Different projects have a way of like handling their teams and running their project and their programs, right? So by the time maybe you contribute to like different open source projects, you are already accustomed. You know like how to work with people in different time zones, how to communicate with people in different culture, different country and all that. So it makes you stand out. Let's say you have a cultural fit interview. If they ask you those questions, you know what to answer from experience, right? Because you contribute to open source. And then another challenge is like shortage of talented people. Yeah, a lot of people might be doing tech, a lot of people might be calling themselves by a particular title, but then people that are actually talented are very low in number. So, and then most companies, they are going for those talented ones, right? They are hustling for those talents. So if you contribute to open source, I bet you like it will help you build your talent, help you grow, and help you, you know, stand out from others in a talent pool where you have like many people, and then let's say they are looking for a front-end engineer that is good with design system, and let's say now you are contributing to material UI as an open source engineer, but then other people, what they have in their portfolio is a calculator app, their portfolio website, and you know those things. So they easily pick you, right? So yeah, so there is scarce for talent, and open source can help you like stand out in such situations. And then Another challenge is like low number of niche experts. So when I mean niche expert, like people that are expert in a particular niche. So for example, let's say game development, I rarely see like game developers around in our ecosystem. So yeah, that should be like another reason. So if you're an expert in a niche that people are not maybe plenty, you can also like stand out. Another reason is like skill gaps and changing technology landscape. So I have few minutes left. So let me talk about the job career progression. So for you now, let's say you have a job and you want to progress. So you might not progress based on these reasons: lack of visibility and advocacy. Nobody like speaks for you. Nobody sees what you are doing. But then if you are working in open source, contributing to open source, your works are in the open. Everybody sees it. And even people you work with advocate for you, right? Then inadequate recognition, same thing, and rewards. Then bias and subjective evaluation. So open source community, like you already see something like people being biased towards each other and then giving like subjective evaluations, and lack of mentorship and guidance, which open source offers, and then limited opportunity for skills development, which open source also offers. So how open source can help you stand out? You get to learn new technologies, you get to build trust and reputation, and you have access to rich network of people. Like all those top engineers, 10S engineers, you have opportunity to work with them and opportunity to amass experience and build amazing portfolio. So like these are testimonials of people that open source have helped put like in the limelight. So I have to like pick people from our country, Nigeria. I don't have to like pick, so that you know that this is something that is possible. This is something that people have done and I try to help them. So the first one is Divine Odazie. So he raised something, say the first 3 years of getting into tech, he struggled, right? So but then before Oscar Fest 2022, say he was just like a technical writer and all that. So basically after that of Oscar Fest, he met someone and I think he messaged the person, and the person like took him in and mentored him, and today he's like he travels the world for events to speak, and open source like really changed his life. So another person is Uche Chukwuobasi. So last year Oscar Fest, if you are there, he talked how he moved like from zero to hero, like after attending Oscar Fest, and how he leveraged on that to build his career. And then another person is our Routier. So how she went from like beginner to a GitHub expert through leveraging like open source contribution and working in the open source, right? So like these are testimonials that show you that this is possible. This is what can be achievable, and you can actually like stand out like when you leverage open source opportunities like this. So now finding projects, and this is like where it gets like real practical. So now these are like places where you can find open source projects you can contribute to. OVO, Up for Grabs, Code Triage, First Contribution, Good First Issue. So like these are like best place. First of all, you have to identify your skill and interest, then explore this platform and join like open source focused community like Chaos, Oscar Fest. Like be part of the community, know what's going on, and see how you can like leverage those community to, you know, build your skill and get into open source. And then so another one is like project evaluation. So you have to like evaluate what like project you are getting into, like how is the project run, does it fit your interest and goals, like what is your strength that you have to capitalize on, and then what is the weakness you saw in the project that you have to like help them out with, right? So you can also like identify what a project is not doing well, offer to help them do it as an open source contribution, and you can get recognized for doing that. And so if you are getting started in open source, so these are like maybe few steps I listed here. So you have to like select the right open source project, which is very crucial. Like take time to understand the project and, you know, study the works. Okay, begin with small manageable tasks, right? Then study the works of experienced contributors there, and, you know, be collaborative, collaborate with others, and participate in the community. Be active, like engage in the community, and also keep tracks of your contribution. Like use it and build a kind of portfolio that everybody can see. and it's out there that, okay, you are doing the work and you know what to do. And now, how can you leverage this thing to build your expertise? So you have to showcase your technical skills. You don't have to be shy about it. Showcase your strength, showcase what you can do. And also, if you can, contribute to popular open source projects and highlight your contributions. Then how to build commitment. You have to be continuous, embrace challenges, and, be consistent and persistent, like the normal aspire to Maguire, And then you have to like build network with the people, engage, attend conference and meetups, engage in discussions, collaborate on projects, and then, let's say, setting realistic goals for yourself, and staying motivated and disciplined. So also, you have to like know how to measure your success, and also like share your success. And that's the end of it. So thank you very much.
All right, that was awesome. I also know that he had a lot to say. Oh yeah. Okay, cool. I also know he has a lot to say, but we need to like manage time. So does anyone have a question? We're just going to take one. Okay.
Okay. My question is that for a project, is it that someone will have to look for what the project needs, or it will be listed somewhere that, okay, well, we need this, we need this, we need this? You have to sit down and start looking for that.
All right, that's a good question. So if you are familiar with like the open source ecosystem, as like, for example, like GitHub, so they have like the issue tracker board where they list like issues they need to work on, right? It might be design issue, it might be code issue, it might be like discussion. There's also like where you can discuss how to improve this and how to improve that. So you see like where they are listed. Yeah.
So they have a place where those issues are. Okay, so if I'm interested in one particular issue now, someone else somewhere is interested in that same thing. So how will they accept one person? I don't get it.
Well, okay, so the way it works is, like I said, it's a community, it's a collaborative effort, right? If somebody wants to work on this particular task and you two want to work on it, you can still like message, like talk with the person, okay, let's collaborate and work on it together. So it's not like a place where we fight for position. So it's like a community and you can collaborate with others, right? So yeah.
Thank you so much. So my question is about niche. Okay, you said that there are low niche experts. So as front-end or a back-end engineer, how do you find a niche that you can become an expert in? So do you just because you write Python, let's say you write Python or Java now, and you're a back-end engineer, how do you break it down to have a particular niche?
Right. Thank you for that question too. So I believe like in every technology there are particular like sub-parts to them. Let's say for instance, you might be interested in performance, how to make back-end application to perform well. Someone else might be interested in accessibility, how to make it to be accessible to people that have a kind of deformation or, I don't know, disability. Yeah. So another person might be interested in evangelism, like making people to know about this particular product. Another person might be interested in technical documentation, right? So yeah, whether you do back end, whether you do front end, there are like tiny pieces of the software development life cycle where you can focus on, right? You might decide, okay, I want to focus on performance. So you know everything about code performance. Someone might say, I want to focus on security. So the person knows anything about security, and not everybody knows it. So, but once they know, okay, this person is a security expert in this field, you have kind of set yourself up or distinguish yourself from others in that field, right? So yeah.
Thank you so much. Please clap for him. Awesome. So we're going to do something interesting. So we have a few other lightning talks coming up, and usually it's like 10 minutes. So when the time is rounding up, I would need us to like start snapping our hands. Does that make sense? So what we're doing is that we're letting the person know that the time is up. So can we try it? Try snap your hands. Awesome. Cool. All right. So we're going to go into the first keynote of the day, and we have Justin. We have Justin Flores. And he's going to be talking to us about the open source launchpad, the then and now look at tech careers. Please give him a round of applause.
How's everyone doing today? Not too tired? Got enough coffee before you came here? All right, we'll wait just a second here. Okay, perfect. So my name is Justin, and today I want to talk to you about the open source launchpad with a then and now look at tech careers and how open source fits into this puzzle. Actually, it was perfect following Desmond here because his topic is super relevant and related to this one as well. All those things he was talking about tie in to the things I'm going to be sharing with you today too. So, okay. There we go. So if you ever will hear me on a stage talking about open source, you will hear me say this a lot. What is open source? Open source is a method that we use to develop and distribute software, as well as a set of best practices to make software and build teams that make software. It's also a movement that's based on ideals and a philosophy that go beyond just code or software. It's also rooted in a belief that software has an impact that's greater than any one of us individually, and that there are certain freedoms that should be protected. And finally, it's a culture. It's a collection of people, values, and ideas that just so happen to take the form of software projects and communities. So what am I here to talk to you about today? I'm here to tell you a story about the 40-year history of this open source movement, and what exactly is all this free stuff when we talk about open source, what is this free stuff, and how can you build a career and find ways to sustain yourself working on free stuff? So a little bit about who I am. My name is Justin. So I'm originally from the United States. A bit about me and my recent career highlights. So last October, I joined Red Hat as their open source program office, or OSPO, as a community architect. So in my job there, I work on a project called Fedora Linux, which is the upstream for one of Red Hat's biggest enterprise and commercial products. Before that, from June 2020 to October 2022, I worked with UNICEF in their Office of Global Innovation as an open source technical advisor. And there I worked with UNICEF's venture fund as an open source coach. So I was guiding all these different startup companies from multiple different countries on how you build an open source product and build a community around what you're trying to build. Before that, I've participated in various other open source projects and communities over the years. So my academic days aren't so far behind me. I studied networking system administration in my university. I got to even study and minor in open source while I was in school, and I graduated from my university in May 2020, so peak pandemic. So with me and Fedora, long before I had my first job, and even before I started at my university as an undergrad, there was Fedora for me. So Fedora Project is a community of people working together to build a free and open source software platform and to collaborate on and share user-focused solutions built on that platform. Or in just simple English, we make an operating system and we make it easy for you to do useful stuff with it. So I started participating as a contributor in Fedora back in 2015, right around when I got my high school diploma. So I attended the contributor conference for Fedora called Flock that same year, And coincidentally, it was scheduled the week before I was going to start my undergrad classes. So I moved up early and got to meet all these people and check out what all this Fedora thing was. So since then, Fedora has always been a part of me and what I do. I've contributed to various parts of the community, mostly in a non-engineering capacity. The pictures that I have up here on the screen are from various conferences, events, and hackathons that I helped organize and present at for Fedora while I was a university student. So after 7 years of being a volunteer contributor, I was lucky enough to land a full-time role at Red Hat, working on Fedora all the time, all day. So the part that makes my job so wonderful for me is the amazing people that I get to work with in the Fedora community. Sometimes that's my colleagues at Red Hat. Sometimes that's people at other companies who are working in Fedora. And a lot of times it's people who are just volunteers who do it because it's fun or interesting or they're trying to learn something new. So for me in CHAOSS, I started getting involved in CHAOSS back in 2018 as part of research that we were doing at the time in the Fedora Linux community. Fast forward to 2020, I was working at UNICEF to evaluate the open source projects and companies we were working with. So naturally, I turned to a lot of the work that CHAOSS is doing around metrics and measuring to help go into that space a little bit more. So in the picture here, this was from CHAOSScon Europe. Oh, I don't know if I... There we go. So this picture, this is from CHAOSScon Europe 2020, where I presented there about the scoring system that me and my colleague at the time, Cecilia Shapiro, had developed for UNICEF. Today, I participate in a lot of the metrics working groups in CHAOSS, mostly the DEI working group and the DEI review team. DEI is really important to me, and CHAOSS is this community where you can really actually apply these things into practice and get real experience working on that too. So, what is free stuff? I'm going to tell you a short story about all these things that we call open source, and why do people care so much about it? Why do we care about it? So by a show of hands, how many of you have seen this quote before? You know, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. See a few hands. It's famously misattributed, I found out while I was researching this. Most people say, I guess it's attributed to Gandhi, but I don't know who actually said it. But if you look at it, you can actually translate the history of the free software movement to each of those 4 lines. So I'm going to take you through each of these 4 chapters of the open source story to see how we got to where we are today. So first, they ignore you. The first major milestone in this one was in 1983 with the GNU project. GNU was developed partly in the MIT Media Labs in the early 80s by a guy who worked there called Richard Stallman. And he was a researcher, faculty member at MIT, and he had lived through this period of open access to software because before this time, nobody really cared about software. Because at that time, everyone was on hardware. That was where all the money was. Software was, you had to compile it for all these different hardwares, so people didn't really value it the way that we do now. But it was in the 1980s that suddenly we see this shift, that software becomes a commodity. You can pay money for software. That's when that change first happened in the industry. So Stallman saw this thing where suddenly there was this shift in the commercial market for software. And he was used to this place in research and academia where people were just sharing software all the time, sharing their improvements and fixes with each other when there were issues, and suddenly that was stopping. So what does he do in 1983? He decides to build his own operating system and define his values for how he's going to do it. 2 years later, you have the Free Software Foundation in 1985 that's founded. Notably, it was founded in part by Stallman, but also others, and it was originally to help sustain that GNU operating system. Over time, it became really the first notable institution to protect and embrace free and open source software. And then if you go forward 4 more years to 1989, we see this GNU public license, or GPL, that's first drafted that year. And it was drafted by the Free Software Foundation. While it was not technically the first license, it was the first license of its kind that introduced this thing called copyleft. You can come and find me later if you want to talk more about that. What was relevant here is that it marked a significant shift in the perspective in the way that software is developed and how we distribute and share it with each other. So then they laugh at you. I don't know, how many of you recognize this guy on the screen? Is this familiar? So this is Linus Torvalds. He was the creator, is the creator and maintainer of the Linux operating system kernel. So in 1991, this is when he launched the Linux kernel as a kind of an operating system thing. I won't get too much into that. But the relevant thing here is that this is one of the earliest open source projects. It was also an early adopter of the GPL license I just mentioned on the last one, using the version 2 license that was drafted that same year in 1991. And the Linux kernel development practices would go on to shape the entire decade of how open source software was being made across the 1990s. Fast forward a little bit more into 1997. Not sure where I have to point exactly. There we go. So this book called, this was 1997, The Cathedral and the Bazaar. What's notable about this book is just that this is when open source is finally coming into the mainstream. So the author of this book, his whole idea was that the cathedral was this very formalized proprietary software development model. And then on the other hand, you have this bazaar, which was this open market of open source ideas and everyone just doing little pieces. And this is what he was trying to communicate in that book. But there was one problem in 1997, is that when you said this word free, businesses and executives in the company and software end would get very scared and very nervous when you were talking about free stuff with their software. So in 1998, we see the Open Source Initiative. I have to like peek over here. There we go. 1998, so also called the OSI, and their role in the beginning was really to act as a liaison between all these free culture, open source people, and the business world. So convincing the business world that free does not necessarily mean no bottom line or no revenue was a big part of their initial approach. And this is also where we see the first usage of open source actually start to appear. Before that, it was all free software. So 1998, now we actually are using this word open source more commonly. Then they fight you. So in the early 2000s, the tides had not yet turned. Open source was still this weird, gross thing that businesses and companies wanted nothing to do with. I always love this quote from Microsoft, from Jim Alchin at the time in 2001. Open source is an intellectual property destroyer. I can't imagine anything worse than this for the industry. So Microsoft made their feelings no secret. And then another one that I remember at the time was also calling Linux a cancer around that time. There was a lot of other things as well that were very, the business world hadn't quite warmed up to this idea of open source yet. But then when we fast forward into the next decade, into the 2010s, suddenly everything is looking very different. Do the tides ever turn? So the first thing is Microsoft in 2015, Satya Nadella. Microsoft is officially in love with Linux and open source. They have over 140 working groups dealing with over 400 projects that are all in the open source licenses and are being shared back to the community. A little bit more in 2018, if I remember right, Microsoft acquired GitHub for $7.5 billion. And then furthermore, IBM goes on to acquire Red Hat, my current employer, for $34 billion. So this remains one of the largest ever technology acquisitions to date. You can count the ones bigger on one hand. So needless to say, from a capitalist market perspective, open source has won. But now that open source is finally not controversial, and it's often expected in many cases, what does it actually mean to be open source? So I have this handy little mnemonic. I remember these as the 4 R's. If there's anything that you can remember about open source and what that means, it's these 4 freedoms, is what they're often called. So these are the essential principles. If you take away any one of these things, whatever you're doing or creating, it's no longer open source. It might be something else, but it's not open source. So the first one is the freedom to read, that you can find the source code or you can study something, understand how it works. You have the freedom to run it or use it any way that you like. Someone can't say you can only use it on this computer at this time, or there's no restrictions on how you can use the software. or the content or the data. And then to revise, you have the freedom to make changes and modify it however you wish. There's no restrictions on what kinds of changes you make. And finally, redistribute. You can share your changes with other people. So those are the 4 things that when we're always talking about open source, those are the things that people mean. That's what's being included in the deal when we get into licenses and software. Again, if you take away any one of those things, whatever it is, it might be something, but it's not open source. So finally, what is the future of working on free stuff? I just want to cover some metrics here really quick just to kind of show what the landscape looks like in 2023. So this is all coming from GitHub on their 2022 Octaverse State of the Octaverse report. So just on 2022, over 94 million developers are on the platform, and 20.5 million joined in 2022 alone, which is huge. That's larger than the number of people, for context, who live in the Netherlands, and it's just shy of how many people live in Sri Lanka. So just imagine how silly it would be for a moment if every single person in the Netherlands decided that they were going to start contributing to open source on GitHub. It's a lot of people that are out there. Also, on 2022, there are over 85.7 million repositories that are out there, and there's no shortage of projects to choose from. The challenge is having to stand out and attract new contributors to a project in what is becoming a very competitive space. Further to that point, also last year, GitHub recorded over 3.5 billion contributions on the platform. And that could be things from commits, to issues, to pull requests, to discussions, to gists, to pushes, pull request reviews, everything in between. So I'm just going to share, I think actually, Desmond's talk before me did a really good job of getting more concrete about the details of how you can get involved. I'm going to take it from a higher level here and just look at different spaces where open source exists and how it's becoming a part of our software world that we live in today. So we'll talk about commercial uses in the business and the enterprise. We'll look at government really quick, and then we'll look at international NGOs and aid agencies. On the commercial side, I think this one is probably the easiest one to look at just because it's really hard not to find these days. I think generally where we are today, you'll hear a lot of people talking about OSPO, Open Source Program Office. This is becoming a thing a lot of the enterprises and big companies are doing to organize their open source work because there was so much of it happening a lot of times that it was becoming a problem. People were getting into trouble with it because people weren't paying attention to it, amongst other reasons. But in many ways, the OSPO helps unify the open source activity in the organization. So if you're going to hang out for OSCA Fest this weekend, you might hear some people that talk about OSPOs and what that means. Some examples here is also Google. They have their Google Summer of Code that comes from their open source program office, and they've been doing that for at least over 10 years. I know longer. As one example, my employer, Red Hat, all of the products that we make in the company are based on or are completely open source. So in that way, like almost anything that you are hired to work on at Red Hat, you're almost always going to, you are going to have to be involved in open source in some kind of capacity. There's also outreachy internships, I think, are another great example. Meta and Facebook, they actually have a really huge open source program office with React, and they have a bunch of Docusaurus, a bunch of other projects that they steward. No shortage of examples in the commercial space. On the government side, I'll just look at one example here with the 18F in the United States. So there's a part of the United States government called the General Services Administration, and 18F is kind of like the tech, digital services delivery or tech expert team in the US government. And so as part of their, I'll read what their statement is here, is that they develop in-house digital solutions to help agencies meet the needs of the people and the businesses that they serve. This requires flexibility in how they code with a focus on lowering costs for the American people while improving the people's interactions with the US government. So the default position of the 18F, whenever they create a new project, is to, one, use free and open source software licenses so that it's not charging users a purchase or a licensing fee, and that there's options to contribute back. They also, two, they develop their work in the open, so you can actually see the work happening out there on GitHub for all these different government services. And third is that they publish publicly all source code created or modified by 18F, whether that's developed in-house by the government staff or through contracts that are negotiated by 18F. And finally, on the international NGOs and agencies, this is my background before I went to Red Hat. I was working with UNICEF, doing all things open source there. One example I really loved was I got to work with a project called Seaboard, which is a AAC project, Augmented an alternative communication tool. So they built a platform using kind of like pictures and text that you could, if you had a speech disability or you had a hard time communicating, you could create sentences and talk to other people by choosing these pictures. And this product was one that was developed by folks in Argentina that ended up being distributed across Eastern, Southern Europe. And I love this one. Oops, let me change the slide here. Just because it was a really highly impactful example of how open source projects are, especially like in public sector, UN agencies, it's really becoming a huge thing there as well. So let's wrap this up. How can this all, everything I've just told you now, how can this actually connect into your career? So I'm going to give you 3 takeaways here. If there's anything you remember from my talk, it's these 3 things. So the first one is to remember those 4 freedoms. The freedom to read, run, revise, redistribute, or the 4 R's. So open source is almost becoming a buzzword these days. So I think it really is important that you remember what people mean when they say open source, and whether the way someone else is using open source actually includes these 4 freedoms, because it might not if you ask someone. So it's always good to be clear about these things, because if they're not, whatever they're doing, it's just not open source. Second, use open source as a way to launch or grow your career, which I think was pretty much Desmond's talk right before me. Participating in open source projects and communities can help you apply either it's new skills that you're learning, you're trying to break into something new, or learn a new skill. It can help you network with other industry professionals to grow your network and meet other people. And it can also build connections that can lead to a big break, whether that's your first tech job or just trying to spin your career in some new direction. And third, and finally, get to know your fellow attendees here, other speakers, and the organizers. Events like these are excellent opportunities to network and get to know other people and learn something new. There's a lot of knowledge that's just here floating around in this room if you can just grab it and collect it. So think about how you go from being a passive attendee to a more active attendee so that you can leave the event with more than you had when you came in. I really cannot overemphasize the importance of that networking and getting to know other people. Like, for example, if I hadn't gotten to know Ruth back when she was starting to do chaos things, then I probably wouldn't have been here on the stage talking to you right now. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can find any of my contacts there. I've got Twitter, GitLab, Matrix, and my website that are up there on the screen. You can also find me around this week. I'll be here at CHAOSScon and this CHAOSScon Fest during the week as well. Thanks so much.
Can we please jam those hands again? So if you do not remember anything, Justin mentioned you have the freedom to what? The freedom to what? Okay, that's a little disorganized. Let's do it again. You have the freedom to do what? Awesome. Okay. All right. So before we go into the next thing, I want us to. All right. So we're taking questions for the keynote. Does anyone have any question? Cool.
So my question is that actually wanted to address it, but I think it skipped his mind. So why will someone build a career around free stuff? Who will buy me data? How will I get all those things? So
Justin, this question is for you. She's asking, like, how would you build a career around something that is free and not paid for?
I think a big part of it is that exposure part. Like for me, I mean, I'm definitely an example of that because I started working in open source long before I had a job or career in tech. And I think what open source allowed me to do was in my very beginning, before I had really any job experience, I was still in university, was I got to kind of see what goes into this open source project. So for me, it was Fedora Linux, and I got to see, like, okay, there's all these different teams, and people are doing design over here, some people are packaging software over there, and I was like, okay, well, like, I was like, so marketing and content, like writing for a blog or like a publication, those were interesting things to me. I had no experience in how to do those things, and I was just like, sounds cool, can I help with it? And someone was like, sure, like here's some documentation to help you get started. Like the things Desmond mentioned are good signs to look for in a community, or people and things that interest you, and a good technology stack, things that you're interested in. When you take that and you can use that as a way to learn those new skills, like for me, I got to learn a lot about like search engine optimization and all these different things about WordPress just because I was helping write for the Fedora magazine, which was just this user, like Linux user publication that Fedora runs. So I think it really is, it's a very personal, I think, decision around what kind of things you're interested in, where you want to take your career, but I think that's the power of open source, is you can show up into a community or a project with zero experience, and if there's a helpful community there that can bring you in, you have that opportunity to do these things without having to have a degree or some qualifications, and you can get real experience that you can take into the workforce or into your first job.
All right, so we have one more question.
So I picked the parts where you talked about the Google Summer of Codes. So when you want to like apply to the Google Summer of Codes, is it that you have to like contribute to the company's open source projects, or just any random open source and use it to apply?
So that's a great question. I'll give you the documented reason and the undocumented reason. So the official on paper reason is that, like, yes, like you are, like with Outreachy, with Google Summer of Code, they have that community process or community phase. They have different names for what they call it, but there is that idea like for a month or so, you're just hanging out in the project community. You're maybe working on a small project or something that is kind of getting you more exposed in the community, and also helps the people who are running the internship to see you and see, like, oh, like here's this person that got, like, they get a 2 pull requests during this month, and you can get that exposure during the application process. However, the like undocumented or unofficial thing is, I think if there's a community that you know gets involved with Google Summer of Code or Outreachy, and that's something that you'd like to pursue, you know, there's no reason you only have to show up in May. Like, so for me, I was in Fedora in 2015. It was probably like 8 months or so I was in the project before I did Google Summer of Code in 2016. And so I did participate in that community bonding phase that Google Summer of Code has, but then I was also doing all this stuff before then too, so the people who are running the project, they knew me a little bit. I wasn't a stranger, basically. So I think that helped me because, you know, I was there, I'd been around, so I was recognized. But I think that's kind of the thing, is that you definitely don't want to overlook that stage of that community participation phase or Outreachy. But if there's a community that you're really interested in and you want to get involved, try to see if there's other ways you can participate ahead of time before the official application start and end date. It'll just give you that extra edge.
Thank you so much, Justin, for answering those questions. Yeah, and thank you both for asking. So we're just going to move into the next agenda, which is the tea break. But before that, I want to do a social media shout out. Please bring out your phones. All right? Your phones. Your phone. You don't have one? Oh, okay, cool. Sorry. All right, so take a picture with the person sitting next to you and tweet at us. It's Chaos Africa on Twitter. Chaos _ there's an _ Africa, right? Then there's a hashtag, is hashtag CHAOSScon Africa 2023. Did you get that? Pictures, pictures. Oh, I don't know. Did you take screenshots or pictures of when any of the speaker is speaking? Just post that as well. You can take pictures of me. You're welcome. Yes. I'm looking so good today, so yeah, you can take pictures of me. Just let me know, so I'll pose. Are you taking pictures of me? All right, tweet at us. Chaos_Africa. Who has done that? Who has done that? I know I've seen a couple of persons post before now, like Justin. Shout out to Justin. he has been posting back to back, yes. Who has done that? No one. Wow. You have. What if I say you're going to win a prize? All right, cool. Hi. So while we're at that, we're just going to continue with the next agenda. So please, we're going to do this. I don't know if our ushers are on standby. Hi. Awesome. So we're just going to start from the back row. So you're going to go over there to pick your fave. Don't worry, we have many dishes for you. Are we ready? Are we ready to have some tea? So please follow the lead of the ushers and we'll be cool.
This is the University of Africa.